are not going to be able to get here. It's going to be mandatory training, so we're going to be sending it out, ensuring that everybody's going to get it. And there's going to be a sign-off form that they have indicated they've seen the information and are familiar with it. You guys that signed the sign-in sheets tonight, is everybody signed in? That will be what we'll go by on this. We've got tonight with us, we've got Ann Lee, Human Resources. Some of you know Ann, and I've worked with her before. And Cynthia Daly, who is the county attorney. She's going to be presenting the first part of the training tonight with dealing with discrimination, harassment issues. And we felt it important enough to bring everybody in, bring everybody up to speed on what the training actually consists of and what is actually meant by harassment, discrimination, and things that occur in the workplace. By virtue of most everyone in here, or everyone in here, exception myself and Chief Ballou, are volunteer people and volunteer personnel. You are employees of the county, even though you don't get a paycheck for it. And one of the things that we want you to know is that there are certain things that are applicable for career people, certain things that are applicable for volunteers. Part of what we're going to cover tonight, the first part of it is applicable to everyone. And then the other parts that we're going to cover tonight are going to be applicable really to volunteer and attendance requirement issues. And we'll talk about some other issues that are going on. I'll turn things over to the chief and let him go from there.
First off, thank you everybody for coming tonight. I know as volunteers it's hard to go on a set schedule sometimes for a class, and that's why we're starting some new technology. We got Pete. Y'all thank him because he's helping us out a lot. We're gonna put him on the roster before it's too long, I'm sure. But he's recording this. So is it on YouTube? That you'll be able to
YouTube, Carroll County streaming.
YouTube, Carroll County streaming. You'll be able to start a lot of the classes. We're going to start doing this way, so that way, instead of trying to make rounds to every single station, some of these big classes we're doing it right now. We're experimenting with that. But once again, thank you for coming. We've got a lot of stuff to do. Cynthia is the county attorney. She's going to do the discrimination class for you. This is a mandatory class for everybody, volunteer and career. So please pay attention. And then Cynthia was a teacher. She still has a ruler, I think, to swipe her back in the hands or whatever. So if you fall asleep, some of y'all may have actually had her for a teacher at some point or another.
Look at her, I don't think so. I don't think I had any of those.
I wouldn't claim on me.
I did have Pete, just so y'all know.
You did have Pete,
I
okay.
did have Pete back
Pete, well,
then.
Pete probably still got marks on his knuckles from the ruler then, right? And then, of course, Ann Lee, our HR director, and so Human Resources, whether you're a career paid employee or a volunteer, we still fall under Human Resources as far as the county's liability and legal aspects. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cynthia and Ann and let them do this part of the program so they can get on to their next meeting. And
I got a 4-year-old I got to get to bed in a little while.
hopefully everybody voted today. If you hadn't, it's almost too late.
Well, we might get out of here if your precinct is closed. As the chief said, my name is Cynthia Daly. I have been the county attorney since 2009, and I have been practicing law since 2001. And prior to that, I was a teacher. I won't tell my age, but I did have Pete way back when in the 90s. Discrimination training is required by law once a year for all employees and for volunteers. And so with the volunteer program kicking back up, we're trying to record, so hopefully this is not going to be where they have to sit through a class like you are, but I do appreciate y'all being here today. It's interactive. If you've got questions, stop and ask me. The purpose of today is really to review unlawful discrimination and harassment in the workplace. There is a distinct difference between unlawful and just harassment, and we're going to be talking about that some, because a lot of people like to throw those words around, but there's a legal definition for it, and then there's the colloquial things that we just say. So we're also going to discuss what you'll need to know in order to recognize it and prevent it, any form of unlawful discrimination or harassment. We're going to discuss your responsibilities for recognizing it, preventing it, and confronting unlawful discrimination and harassment. We're also going to review methods of resolving unlawful discrimination and harassment. And finally, the big thing is to communicate the county's expectations that employees, volunteers, anybody who's working under the county umbrella, who believe they've been subjected to sexual or other unlawful harassment, that or believe that you witnessed some contact, something along those lines, that you must report it to immediately to the fire chief, who you know, and to the deputy chief, and I'm talking about Tad Richardson at this point. You can also report to Bud, but the two primaries that we want you to go to are the chief and Chief Richardson, or the director of human resources. That's him.
Their direct line, chain of command is actually Chief Benefield.
Yeah, but this is a different scenario, and that's why I want to talk to y'all about it a bit. It has, when you report it to these people, that's directly puts the county on notice. And so these people that are in the higher positions, they get held responsible for it. So the reason I've asked you for those issues, just only this, is to Chief Richardson, is because Bud shouldn't have to have that responsibility, because it's the accountability is at the top. Okay, now you may talk to Bud, but Bud's going to tell you, you need to report this to the chief or to Chief Richardson or to the analyst. I want you to understand the requirement of that one guy. I had added some extra stuff for when I did this with the other county people. Y'all don't need to know that. But the county, just so you know, we have a policy on the books that all of our employees are required to sign, that we unequivocally, from the county's perspective, oppose not only sexual harassment, but any other form of unlawful discrimination or harassment. And each and every employer volunteer shares in that responsibility to remain the workplace and the work environment free from any type of unlawful discrimination. The county has that policy, and we enforce that policy. And it's a very important policy from a legal standpoint. So we stress prevention, prevention, prevention. We don't want to be dealing with it on the back end, because we don't want anybody losing their job. We don't want anybody being asked not to volunteer anymore because of issues. So prompt informal resolution is what we want to focus on. So when we talk about employees' responsibility, that also includes you as volunteers. So you need to know and understand what the harassment policy is and follow it. So we're going to go over that. We want you to set a positive example by your behavior for our employees. And treat everyone with dignity and respect. Now that doesn't make stuff unlawful, that's just an expectation. And if you are the recipient, or somebody saying something to you that you don't think is appropriate, not to accept behavior that may be offensive. And to make your feelings known about it. In other words, if there's something being said or a joke being bandied about that you think is inappropriate, say, hey dude, that's inappropriate in the workplace. You want to call me at home? Tell me, I'm good with that, but not here. And immediately report instances of unwanted conduct. Now, does anybody have any idea what I mean by unwanted? What does unwanted mean? What does that mean?
The receiver doesn't appreciate whatever.
That's correct. It's the person that's receiving the message, not the person that's giving it. Okay, so if they're saying it in your presence, and there might be 3 or 4 more standing around, it might not be a problem for you, but you need to say, dude or lady, not in, guys, not in this context. We do it at home, fine, but not at work. So here's the boring part, is the legal background. So Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, this is what it says exactly. An unlawful employment practice for an employer, it is an unlawful employment practice for an employer to discriminate against any individual with respect to their compensation, terms, conditions, or privileges of employment because of such individuals' race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Do y'all see the word harassment in there anywhere? No. That has been a judicial interpretation of the statute. So it has expanded beyond the statute. So when they say sex, because this had the word sex in it, the courts have interpreted that to be sexual harassment, and they've created a whole body of law in terms of that. And so Title VII covers everything from hiring to promotion to discipline. It covers it all. And so there has been a whole area of litigation that has developed around it. because we are a governmental employer, that takes its form under typically a Section 1983 case, which is a constitutional violation. So, from a constitutional sense, because it's a government employer, what that means is we have violated, or the allegation is that we have violated the individual's rights under Equal Protection Clause. So there's Title VII and there's Section 1983 that apply to a government employer. If it's a private employer, it's only Title VII. The Supreme Court has had some big cases that have shaped kind of how the lower courts have interpreted things. The two biggest ones are the Ellerith and the Farragut. And what those two cases basically did is created a safe harbor for employers. And so they call it the Ellerith-Farragut defense. And one part of that defense is that employers have to provide sexual harassment training and have a policy on it and enforce that policy. If they do those three things, they don't have liability under Title VII. So now you see why you're sitting here? That's why, okay? And so it's called an affirmative defense. They have also created another element of it that has made same-sex harassment can be actionable, where before it was not. So, this is the county's perspective. It's good news for us from an affirmative defense side. That means that when no tangible employment action is taken, a defending employer may raise an affirmative defense to liability or damages. That's Farragut and Burlington and Elliott. And so we do the training and we practice what we preach. So the required elements of this defense are that the employer exercise reasonable care to prevent and correct promptly any sexually harassing behavior. So that's why the reporting is so important. If it's reported to us, we have to investigate it. Now that does not mean that every time we receive a report that unlawful discrimination has happened, right? It just means that we've taken and looked at it and examined it under the law to determine what has occurred. Now there are going to be some things that don't rise to the level of being unlawful, but it really shouldn't be going on in the workplace, okay? And then the employee, the second part of it is that the employee unreasonably failed to take advantage of any preventive or corrective opportunities provided. So as the employer and volunteer, if you don't take advantage of what we've set out in terms of the policies and who to report to and what to do, then you could be barred if God forbid, sexual harassment or any kind of discrimination was occurring to you in the workplace. Now, defining harassment, because people throw these words around a lot. And they'll tell me, I was just harassed at work. That, you know, and not necessarily here, but I'll have people call me all the time and I'll say, well, what exactly happened? Well, my boss yelled at me. Well, I hate to tell you, that's not harassment. You know, that's just a bad boss. So, harassment is defined as conduct that degenerates and shows hostility toward an individual because of that individual's race, color, religion, gender, national origin, age, or disability, or because of those aspects in the individual's relatives, friends, or associates. Now, when the boss yells at everybody, it's just a bad boss. When the boss gives everybody changes their schedule all the time, that's an equal opportunity jerk. That doesn't make them unlawful harassment, okay? What does is singling somebody out because of their national origin, because of their sex, because of their religion, or those type of things, and doing something to them that they're not doing to others in a, and we're going to cover this later, in a severe and pervasive way. So the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, they are charged with taking complaints under Title VII and investigating those complaints. So they have guidelines as to things that could include harassment in terms of race, color, religion, gender, national origin, age, or disability. Epithets, slurs, threats, negative stereotyping, hostile acts, hostile written or graphic, posted material circulated in the workplace. Those are things that they've identified could form the basis for discrimination and harassment. But there's a reasonable person standard. So the standard for determining if the conduct rises to the level of harassment is whether a reasonable person standing in that person's shoes would find the same conduct intimidating, hostile, or abusive. So it's not your eggshell person, that's like everything offends them. This is a reasonable person standard. What would a normal person think? Now, as I told you, sexual harassment has its own branch that has come off of that. And this is just to talk about raising the awareness for the prohibition of forms of unlawful harassment. So sexual harassment is a form of unlawful harassment that's prohibited under Title VII. It's also prohibited under state law and by the policies of the county. So inaction or behavior of basic employment decisions, like we're not going to hire somebody because they're Catholic, or we're not going to hire somebody because they're Jewish, or we're not going to hire somebody because they're female. Those type of decisions that are based on an employee's sex and are treating the employee differently because of their sex, rather than basing it on other things, their work experience and the qualifications, those are the type of things that we're talking about. Now, it has to be unwelcome behavior of a sexual nature. So, if a husband and wife are working together, that's not necessary. They can have a relationship. It's not unwanted, right? I mean, they're married to one another. So if he calls her honey in the workplace, we'd rather them not act like they're married in the workplace, but that's not unwelcome typically by the wife or the husband, and vice versa. So it has to be unwelcome. Now here are some things that they believe to be, the EEOC has come out and said just, period. Job benefit in exchange for sexual favors. You don't see this much anymore, but in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s as the law was developing, believe it or not, there was a lot of cases that were dealing with this because, as you know, women were really coming into the work force and moving up, and so there was, y'all heard it, the casting couch, or they got the promotion because they're dating such and such. There were a lot of cases that came up then, and that's when you're exchanging promotion, hiring, and other things on sexual favors. They used to call that quid pro quo, now they don't. Or if a supervisor demands sexual favors from an employee in exchange for promotion, a raise, or anything else, those are just per se, out the gate, unlawful. If a supervisor threatens to discharge an employee or takes some other adverse action unless the employee submits to the supervisor's demand for sexual favors, you would think in today's day and time that would never happen, wouldn't you? Seriously, you'd think that, because, y'all hear this all the time, but it does. I have cases all the time, not for here, because I represent other clients, but where it's kind of gone on. The employee gets discharged, and then later comes back and says, well, my supervisor asked me out, and I wouldn't go out with them, and so all of this stuff started happening. But they never came forward while they were at work. While they were still working, they waited until they got fired. So those are things that the court also looks at, is when you report it. Now, those things we just talked about are pure sexual harassment, strict liability. Now we're talking about a hostile work environment, which is a completely different animal. So a hostile work environment exists where an employee is subjected to unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, or other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature, and this conduct unreasonably interferes with the employee's ability to do their work, or where the conduct creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Pretty broad, right? So that could be a lot of things. Well, the cases have developed over time to kind of set forth what that means. And so the test, the legal test for it, is whether it is severe and pervasive. And severe and pervasive, I want to give y'all some examples because it's really bad. Some of the cases that I've seen that rise to the level of severe and pervasive were that every day when a female employee came in a primarily male environment, they had nude pictures put in their locker. They had their underwear strung up on a flagpole. They had people coming by and, you know, in tight spots, brushing up against them, constantly, every day for months. It took that to get to severe and pervasive. Conduct that I would have thought would have been severe and pervasive by the courts, they didn't find it to be severe and pervasive being the word. Pervasive meaning has to go on a lot. One incident, not enough. 2 or 3, probably not enough. It really depends on the conduct, but it's a very high bar test for a hostile work environment. A victim's consent to it is not necessarily a defense if the acts were unwelcome. Now that sounds kind of strange. What do you mean? If they consented, how could it be unwelcome? Because there are some instances in which they don't believe that there's such a thing as consent, and that's a supervisor to an employee. Because although it may, and I'll give you an example, I had a case down in Liberty County. It's a sergeant in the sheriff's department and a female investigator. The sergeant was actually her supervisor. They dated. For a while, she became pregnant. They had a baby together. They were in a relationship. They broke up. And she didn't want anything else to do with him and was making that very clearly known. And he kept on in the workplace. It ended up turning into a lawsuit because he was her supervisor. So while it started out as a consensual relationship, it ended up not being one. And so that's why we strongly discourage people. We have a policy actually on the books for employees that if they're married or in a live-in relationship, they can't work in the same department together unless they can be in a separate sector. It has to permeate. I mean, it has to be systemic. I mean, it's just really a high bar as to what those things to get to severe and pervasive. But, so, steps to prevent sexual harassment. First thing is to have a written anti-discrimination policy that specifically covers sexual harassment. The county does, and if y'all don't have a copy of it, we'll make sure you get it. I know the chief and them do, so we'll make sure it's distributed throughout. The policy should be widely distributed to employees and management, which we do. Every employee gets an employee handbook, and I think y'all get some stuff when you come in as volunteers. Isn't that right, Chief?
That's some of the stuff we're finishing up later tonight.
Okay. And then we have a complaint procedure that requires a harassed employee to make management aware of the concerns. It allows employees more than one avenue to file a complaint. Well, we went over that earlier, didn't we? So, Rob, where do you report it? Who do you report sexual harassment to or discrimination?
To the chief,
Yeah, or
the deputy chief.
and, that's right. So we've gone over what the mechanisms are. So if you go back to and you see it and you go to your buddy in the fire station, are you following the policy? No. Who do you need to go to? Chief, Richardson, or Hanley. Okay, and then for the employer to take prompt action when a complaint is filed. So prompt that doesn't necessarily mean tomorrow. It means not putting it off for a year, but to start dealing with it. Sometimes it takes a long time to investigate things and to go through and deal with it, but we try to get them resolved when we have a complaint within 2 or 3 weeks. All right. First of all, steps to prevention, education. Educating everybody about the policy and the potential liability that we have for it. Protect yourselves by avoiding a workplace romance. I mean, I cannot really stress that enough. And then also avoiding favoritism or the appearance of favoritism. Why? Why favoritism? Because that's not really harassment or that's not really discrimination, but what does it make people feel like? Hello, y'all.
You just opening the door.
There you go.
Something happened.
You are, and people see favoritism as that person's getting special treatment for some reason, right? And how does it make you feel when that happens? Not as valuable, right? So, from our end, plan is to make employment decisions based on reasonable business grounds, and I think the county strives very hard to do that, and the department heads strive very hard to do that. Now, for you guys, very important, do not tell sexual, racial, or ethnic jokes in the workplace. Everybody around you may bust out laughing, but I say this all the time, and Ann has heard it 1,000 times. When they get mad at you, the wheels on that bus are going over you, because that's when they're going to roll on you. Yes or no? It's all good until they get mad at you. And when they get mad at you, they're about to throw you under the bus, and every wheel on the bus is going to roll over you. So just don't do it. And if other people are doing it, say, dude, and I'm using dude for both males and females, I wouldn't do that here. I'm walking off and I say don't do it, and then tell somebody. Because we don't want it to start and we don't want it to continue. Even if everybody is standing there laughing. So, you know, I am a hugger. So I have to be aware of who's comfortable with being hugged and who is not. Okay? It's a southern thing. I'm a hugger. And so I have to be very conscious of it. I don't think when somebody I first meet them, the first thing I'm going to do is hug them, you know? I mean, I'm going to make sure that it's, you know, it's not unwelcome, because typically they'll do you first or whatever, but y'all know what I'm talking about when it's not wanted. But don't be the hanger around her or the following person, because you are just as guilty of it as the person who's doing it. And that's the person that's telling off-color jokes. That's the person that's, you know, posting the cartoon that's, you know, about religion, somebody's religion, or about their race. So don't be the person that's the hanger-on or the follower. Be very careful with your touching, because remember, it's unwelcome. I'm not saying, you know, don't touch anybody, but be careful with it. Some people do not like their private space invaded. They don't. You know, they're that, stay in this zone is my zone, and I don't want this zone. Y'all know those close talkers? Y'all know what I'm talking about? When you talk to somebody, they're going to be just like right up on you when they talk to you. You'll notice the people that don't like their space violated, they'll take that step back, and then the close talker will move in. You just got to say, hey dude, this is my space, that's your space, stay out of my space. Whistling and catcalls. It can be really funny with the group that you're standing around with, but I'm telling you, when they get mad, the bus is rolling over you. Don't do it. You know, when it's all guys at the firehouse and the girl inappropriately going down the street on her bicycle in her bikini, don't start the catcalls, okay? Yes, she should be on the bicycle in the bikini, but just don't start the catcalls. The sex jokes, you know, don't do it. And if you're hearing them, put a stop to it. While everybody's laughing at that moment, I'm telling you, Chief, how many times have we seen it? Once somebody gets mad, the bus is rolling, trust me. Or asking about people's sexual experiences. You know, what were you doing last night? Were you with such and such? Did y'all get it? Don't do it. Not in the workplace. It's not appropriate. Y'all know this one. Looking up and down. That is not appropriate in the workplace. Okay, and then you got your obvious. The sexual comments of, you know, nice rack on you, or, you know, those are inappropriate. The sexual innuendos, like, and our presidential candidates were doing it. Ooh, big hands, small hands, you know, that stuff. Turning a reply into a sexual comment. The sexual cartoons, and y'all know what I'm talking about, don't you? And the calendars, my favorite. I monitor the shop, by the way. So I make a point of walking through every now and then just to see what's on the calendar. Because they get the free car calendars that always have the girl in the bikini straight across the hood. And so I go, not here, y'all, get the other calendar. Sexual materials, you know, I mean, this is the obvious stuff. Playboy, penthouse, not in the workplace. Repeatedly asking a date from a person who's not interested. That's if you get the no the first time, don't go back the second and third time. Just don't ask them out in the workplace. And if you've asked them outside the workplace and you're working with them, don't repeat it. They don't want you. They've made that clear. Don't want to go out with you. All right, verbal stuff. That's the sexual comments about the person's clothing, body, or looks. Like, nice shirt because it's low cut. Could that top get tighter? Nice pants. Those kind of things. When they walk by. Smacking the lips. I had one, this was the allegation, every time she walked by her boss, got the lip smacking. I was like, how do you even do that with people? Spreading rumors about a person's sex life. This one actually happens a lot. Of such and such, especially, I'm going to pick on we females for a minute because if there's a female in the workplace in a typical man's environment, which I'm in, lots of times you'll hear, oh, well, they're sleeping with everybody, or I saw her in the truck with somebody, they're having an affair. Do not engage in the spreading of rumors and lies. Again, babe, honey, whatever, watching the comments, sexual topics. I mean, these sound like, please, you don't have to remind us of this, but y'all, it goes on. And Chief has heard me say this more than once. I know that y'all not necessarily, because as volunteers, but firemen are in a firehouse for 24 hours a day together. And so, keeping topics from turning to a sexual nature, I remind them all the time. Asking about a person's personal sex life or social life, just stay away from it. Or fantasies, or preferences, or their history, stay away from it. There's even nonverbal, the facial expressions, the winking, the throwing kisses, the, ooh, yeah, come on in. He's going, really? Making the gestures. Letters, gifts, and materials of a sexual nature. Y'all are thinking that's a given. I had one in which the employee gave another employee a bag of little penises that you wound up and they bounced across the table. I'm like, really? In the workplace? So, y'all think this is like, how do you have to say this to somebody? But apparently you do. Staring. I mean, I have had, you wouldn't think that would be a big deal, but it makes some people very uncomfortable, especially according to where your stare is located. Y'all may have heard this before from somebody else. Right here, you talk to me right here. Blocking a person's path. I talked about that a bit earlier, but especially in narrow spaces so that you have to brush up against one another to get through. There's times when you're going to have to do that, but I'm talking about making a point of it so they have to. The same thing with keeping them from being able to move without having that kind of contact. Sexual derogatory comments on mugs and hats and clothing. Just keep them out of the workplace. And again, we've already talked about the personal space. Yeah. You wouldn't think you need to tell anybody not to tear somebody's shirt so that they're dreaming. You have to have that conversation sometimes. And there's one you go, really? You have to say that to somebody exposing oneself? Apparently you do, because it's been rampant in some cases. So keep your business where your business belongs in your clothes. The old neck massage and the shoulder massage. Don't just walk up to people and start massaging them. It may be unwelcome. Or they ask you, hey, I got a kick in my neck, we massage it. That's not what I'm talking about. You hear the office stories or the workplace stories of the person that's the serial toucher. They're always coming up and they're putting their hands on people and they're massaging them. Don't be that person. Don't be touching their hair, their body, or their clothes, the kissing, the stroking, the patting, and definitely Don't be grabbing yourself in the workplace. Okay. Have they got any computers back out in the houses with internet? Computers, no using the county computers to surf inappropriate websites, YouTube videos, or any of that stuff, or receiving or sending emails with inappropriate jokes or comments in them, okay? Fax machine is kind of outdated, but some people still have them. Don't be sending no explicit joke over the county's fax machine, or email, or voicemail, or screensavers. You know, I walked in a department one time, and the screensaver was the girl in the bikini draped over the car. I'm like, change it. Change the screensaver. I went into another department one time, and on the billboard, on the bulletin board, there was a postcard that one of the employees was on vacation and sent it back to the other employees, and it was the butt showing on the beach. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Y'all seen those postcards? Well, it's up on the bulletin board for everybody to read. I'm like, no, take it down. So you would think it doesn't happen. It does. So that's why I have to say it. The county policy is, county-owned technologies are not to be used to create or send any offensive or disruptive messages, including but not limited to profanity, sexual references, racial slurs, comments about someone's age, color, gender, religion, national origin, or disability. That is the official policy. Now, in the workplace, so everybody is very clear, there is no expectation of privacy. And what I mean by that is, that's related to utilization of the county's technology. So even if you have a login on the computer, you have no expectation of privacy. We can see exactly what you have done in the history and with IT. So don't put yourself in that situation. We had some that were watching some videos they didn't need to be watching. And so don't do it. If you're using the county Wi-Fi on your personal phone, are you still using the county technology? Yes, you are. So don't do it. Now, this is important for anybody that reports in good faith a complaint of harassment or unwanted conduct. There is a retaliation provision. That means you're not going to be retaliated against for reporting. So it's a violation of federal and state law, as well as the county's policy, to retaliate against another for reporting in good faith a complaint of unwanted conduct and or participating in good faith in the investigation of allegations of that nature. Now, good faith is in quotation marks because that's what the law says. If you're not participating in good faith, and how good faith is designed is with more of the motive for reporting it rather than I'm going to give them back because they did something to me, you're going to have the protections. Now, is that a blanket, I can do whatever I want to at work and I can't get in trouble card? What do y'all think? No. Just because you reported doesn't mean that you can now not come to work because nobody's going to fire you. You know, or in y'all's case, that you're going to go out there and break every rule there is on a fire scene and get to continue to volunteer. That's not what it means. What it means is you're not going to be in trouble for reporting it and you're going to be protected for that. So, these are what the EEOC sees as retaliatory tangible employment actions. Hiring and firing, demotion, failure to promote, work assignments, undesirable reassignments, compensation decisions, or employment decisions causing a significant change in benefits. That's how it's defined with the EEOC. Now, when a complaint is received, for the complaint, that's the person making the complaint, the county takes all those complaints seriously. So don't think it's a joke to report somebody did something, or doing something of a discriminatory or harassing nature, because we take them all seriously. Now, at the end, we may find they're unfounded, but we take them all seriously. Because the concerns are going to be promptly and thoroughly investigated. They're going to be forwarded to Human Resources for investigation. And the policy will, prohibits retaliation and that you immediately report any retaliation that's going on to Human Resources or to me. You can do that to me as well. So, just as a summary, anybody that believes that they are subjected to unlawful discrimination or harassment in the workplace, you report it. We'll determine whether it's founded or unfounded, and sometimes, a lot of times, it is, because we'll get to the heart of it, and there's been, for lack of a better word, a TTN contest between two people, you know, and one has got mad and the bus is rolling over the other one, and they were participating in it willingly when it was going on, but now they're mad at them. That doesn't mean we don't deal with it, but that's what we see a lot of times. But always report it, because we do take them seriously. We take our responsibilities under the law very seriously, and the county wants to be a good employer. And the chief wants to be a good chief, and Bud wants to be a good chief. Everybody wants to do their jobs right. So they're dependent upon you, A, to act right in the workplace, and B, to report when somebody's not, and when you think somebody might be uncomfortable with what's going on. Questions? I tried to keep it succinct.
Is there a statute of limitation or for reporting it?
Not necessarily for reporting, but the more temporal proximity there is, and that means the farther away it gets, the more it comes down to why wasn't reported earlier. Sometimes somebody feels threatened. Now, once a complaint has been made in order to file suit, there is a statute of limitations. So if somebody wants to take a complaint to the EEOC, for instance, it has to be done within 180 days of the alleged behavior or the conduct. And then once it's determined through the EEOC, there's 90 days to file suit after that. So there are some statute of limitations there. But in terms of, you know, like 10 years ago, such and such said something to me, well, they're not even here anymore, there's not a lot we could do about it. But, you know, if it happened 2 months ago, and you're thinking about it now and go, you know, that really wasn't cool, it may not be something somebody's going to get fired over, but we'll probably sit down with them and say, put them through some training and go, that's not going to happen. It's according to what the conduct is. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. What if you're on a fire scene and the customer, per se, is
Being inappropriate?
being inappropriate? I mean, obviously, you know, you're like, well, whatever, I'm going to go back to the fire scene. It's done, but I'm just asking.
Well, and it's really important what you're talking about in terms of,
Well,
you know,
so for instance, I'm going up and helping somebody, or I go up and tell somebody, hey, look, you can't have your fire in your backyard.
yes.
Because it's against the law, and then they decide they want to racial slurs or whatever.
Yeah, and some of that just it really sucks.
Well, I know it does.
But, I mean, I would let your uppers know what's going on, and they'll follow up with it. But there's not a lot sometimes we can do about people being jerks not in the workplace. But that doesn't mean we're gonna let their house burn down, you know. But we also don't want you subjected to it. So whoever the incident commander is on the scene, I would let them deal with it. Is that what you would say,
Yeah,
Chief?
we'll handle it.
Yeah, they will. But that shouldn't be for y'all to have to resolve. The incident commander on the scene should resolve that.
Remember one thing too, take into consideration, we're seeing people usually at the absolute worst moment
You are.
that you're seeing people. They're gonna have things inappropriate. Being abused, that's the kind of thing that if you feel like you're being abused, let the ranking officer there know
Right.
who's there.
Let them take your abuse on you.
Yeah, I'm not worried about it. I'm just asking in case.
Now, you know, when the lady walks out butt naked from the house and you're there, you need to immediately start reporting that to somebody, because you know what she's gonna say later?
Oh.
They're gonna turn it around on you, honestly. So make that report immediately to whoever thinks the manual. Hey, that lady doesn't have her clothes on, you know, or whatever. The guy's just dropped his drawers and.
That should be documented in the fire report too.
Yes.
Anything that's unusual needs to be documented in the fire report, because you can justify what had been taking place there, because you documented, you know, they came out, they didn't have clothing on, or they had a knife in their hand, and they didn't have any clothing on. Kind of document what went on there, because it's probably a situation later on it's gonna evolve into something else.
Mhm.
We'll be back out there again.
Yeah, you know, the man said they caught the trailer on fire. Just came running out with a naked or whatever. When law enforcement comes, they're going to say stuff, so.
One thing also, because you made mention about, because of what we do, sometimes we have to take people's clothes off
Yes,
as part of the medical thing, but make sure you document that you did it, and if possible, have another witness with you.
yeah. Yes. And when you're doing that, typically, the person is unconscious or can't get consent to it. So, you know, use your common sense. If they're conscious, say, you know, I need to do this, you know, to explain to them what you're doing. Anything else, Chief? Dan? Questions? I know I blew through that fast and it all seems common sense, but trust me, apparently it's not. Then I'm done, and I'll let them do what they need to do.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Y'all wanna take a quick break before, we start
Stretch,
with our
move
Q&A?
around, you know where the restrooms are at.
It's actually, out in the bay,
Back in January, kind of go over what we wanted to cover. Back in January, we decided that Chief looked at it and said, well, there's a good bit of confusion concerning how people come into the department on the volunteer side, kind of know how the career side works. Volunteers, how they come in, what the process is for them, and a lot of people have been given a lot of different information, told a lot of different things as to how it works. And the handout that we're passing around now is the work of a committee. And we assemble a committee consisting of Captain Doug Green, myself, Rusty Lambert, firefighter Rusty Lambert, volunteer firefighter Spencer Rowell, and Jerry Easton, and the chief sat in at various intervals on the committee. Anybody else on the committee? Did I miss him? I got everybody on the committee. So it started basically in January, and part of what we were doing in there, we tasked everybody to come up with ideas as to how, what should be expected of a volunteer, how the volunteer system would work. And the chief at that time kind of passed the buck to me, said, look, the volunteer issues, you take the volunteer issues and work the volunteer issues on that particular side. And really that's what it amounted to. Was when I did, I said, well, we're going to have, you know, some advice from committee people who are volunteers, some who have been volunteers for quite a while, some who have worked in the volunteer system, and then represent the career side as well, and then some who are recent volunteers, to see exactly what the committee or the group felt would be the best approach to saying, we need to put in place some guidelines. The guidelines started with when somebody comes into the department, how do they get into the department, what's required, what's expected of them, and that's the document that you have in your hand. It's pretty much a flow chart. And a lot of you may remember, well, some of you do in here, remember in days gone by that applications were taken at the station, and a lot of it was kind of maintained at the station.
Are you doing this or
level.
Narcan?
This is volunteer stuff.
Let's do Narcan so Pete can get out of
So
here.
people get out? Okay, all right.
Yeah, go ahead and do the Narcan.
All right, we'll switch gears. I didn't know he had to leave.
Yeah, well,
All right,
you're keeping him for something he don't need to be
Okay.
here for. So.
All right, you did. We'll switch over and do the Narcan. All right, set that aside for right now. We're gonna switch gears.
Thank you.
Pete said he didn't sign up for that.
Okay, now we'll switch gears. It's ready to go. Narcan's up ready, so we can make that happen pretty easy. To try to give you an idea as to what we're looking at. With the increase now of accidental overdoses, opioid overdoses being things like your Lorcets, Darvocets, Percocet, anything that has an opioid-based narcotic drug associated with it is becoming a major problem, not just for the county, but for the entire country. One of the things that we see happening now in the county is an increase of the use of heroin. And most everybody seems to think that meth is still a big problem, but most everybody seems to think that now with the drug culture, the big problem would be cocaine or meth. Well, heroin's rapidly coming onto the scene to take the place of those drugs. Reason being, it is relatively inexpensive. For the most part, marijuana has been decriminalized. Not legalized, but decriminalized. That is, now, if someone is caught with the possession of less than so much, usually less than an ounce, they're not even taken to jail or arrested with an ounce of marijuana, an ounce or less. And an ounce is a good bit of marijuana. for those of you that aren't familiar with it, you know, it's a good bit in a Ziploc bag. And they basically are told, don't use this stuff, it's illegal, it leads to other things. And then they're let go, because you could fill the jails up with people who are possessing and using marijuana in small quantities there. Really who this affects is, you're thinking, well, long term it probably does affect all of us, but more so it affects the Mexican mafia and the Mexican drug traffic. The majority of what we see in illegal drugs, of course most everybody knows this, is coming out of Latin America, Mexico, and those countries as far south as South America. They're sending stuff up. For years and years, the people tell me that the best marijuana came from probably Colombia. And they would say, oh yes, this is good Colombian marijuana. Well, now people can get marijuana relatively easy, and the Mexicans know that. So one of the things they've stopped planting is marijuana plants. They've replaced that with a poppy plant. And that's where they're getting the heroin and other derivatives for other drugs that are coming in and bringing illegal drugs into the country. That is why the heroin prices are so low. I'm told by law enforcement locally and the drug task force locally that the price of a hit of heroin can go range from $5 to $10 for one hit, and they can get enough buzz to get, if they can get a $50 hit of heroin, that can last them a week or so. And people realize that now, so they say, well, why should I worry with marijuana and using marijuana over and over when I get more out of my high using opioid-based drug? And part of what we're going to cover tonight is the abuse of opioids. Most people will start out, and there's probably not a person here that drugs have not affected us in some way or another within our families and our personal life. And to kind of cover what we're talking about with that, you think about maybe the high school, and just using this as an example, the high school student who goes and has wisdom teeth cut out. And as a result, they're given a narcotic pain reliever. When they may only need 2 or 3, they may be prescribed 8 or 10. They then become addicted. And it's not just the high school student. It could be the adult who gets addicted from a knee surgery, a neck surgery, a back surgery, anything that would cause that addiction. And I guarantee you, most of you, if we were honest, I don't ask for a show of hands on this, most of us have the remains of a prescription narcotic in our homes in a medicine bottle right now. It may be 3 years old. But typically, and I heard this from the medical director who's actually a part of this, the Davis Foundation, he said typically they're overprescribed. That is, opioid-based narcotics are overprescribed probably 90% of the time. Meaning, if the person can get by on 2 or 3 pills to get them through the pain, to get them through the surgery, they're prescribed 12 in a lot of cases. That lends to being able to abuse the drug. And I don't have to say, I know people in here are not drug abusers, but we often deal with those people. And we know those people. They're in our community. Some of them may be family members that, by virtue of what they've been through in their lives with surgeries, injuries, illnesses, things that are going on in their lives, they become addicted to medication. I don't make any bones about it. My mother was 83 years old. She was addicted to Loracet. It was prescribed to her. The doctor would say, she can have 30 Loracets this month. And she would take 30 Loracets that month. She didn't, there's a big difference in being addicted and being abusive to the drug, abusing the drug, taking it so much that it causes negative effects in it. Yeah, we can be addicted. We're probably all addicted to eating. And, it can be detrimental if we do it too much, if we abuse it. And in her case, I questioned the doctor about it. I said, look, she had a degenerative spine. And he said, 1 a day helps her get through the day. It's psychological, mainly, so let her have it. He said, does she abuse the drug? No, sir, we administered the drug daily to her. Was there potential for abuse there? There was potential, but as long as someone's administering it. When we get into some of these things, you get into instances where people become addicted, then they abuse the drug. Then it leads to other things. That's why they're showing you this. This picture here is of a young man, and Missy Owen happens to be the executive director of the Davis Direct Foundation. They're out in Cobb County. And what they actually do, this is a picture of her son, college-age son that she lost to opioids and addicted to heroin. They'll be on prescription meds, opioid-based, then they'll move over because they can't readily get prescriptions in a lot of cases. They'll move over and they'll be able to find heroin. Anybody ever hear of a place in downtown Atlanta off Joseph E. Lowry called the Bluffs? The Bluffs are where the majority of the heroin that's in this area is coming from. And that's according to DTF, local DTF folks told me that that's where it's coming out of. You can buy heroin on the street down there 24/7. The right people can buy heroin down there. There's probably not very many people in this room that could go down there and probably live to make it out. Because you know the infestation of the area down there, typically what's running in that area, it's gang control, it's the drug culture heavily in there. But Missy Owen, after having lost her college-age son to addiction, she said, I want to do something. She was able, in her community, in Cobb County, to reach out into the community and get enough support to put together the Davis Foundation. The reason I'm telling you about that is the Davis Foundation is providing the drug Narcan. How many of you are familiar with Narcan and what it does? Okay, some of you are, most of you are. They're providing Narcan. We'll look at what Narcan, how Narcan actually works for those of you that aren't familiar. But she wanted that available. And there was also a push from a young lady who had a daughter. She was I think she works now for the Kennesaw State Police, Kennesaw State University Police Department. She at that time was working for, I believe, Holly Springs. And her daughter became addicted. Teenage daughter became addicted. So she worked in conjunction with reaching out into the community. The two of them did, for education, funding, and being able to come up with first responders a way to treat these patients who are addicted and who overdose. So that's part of what this does. And this, what they provided are opioid overdose kits. We're going to show how we're going to administer that and how it's going to be helpful for that. House Bill 965 was passed in April of 2015, I believe, maybe 14. We'll see in a minute. But nevertheless, it's a year or two old. It's a fairly new law. And when we tend to think of the drug culture, this is what we think of when you look at this. You think about the people that you find laying in the anthill at the truck stop. You think about the people that you go into the house and, this is how they look. Or the guy that's sitting in the middle of the street there and they're taking him away. And this might have been the picture in the 60s. This is more like what you see today. Now, House Bill 965 became law and signed into law. It provided a lot of things and a lot of flexibility for treatment and being able to take care of these people. They're still humans. We look at them and say, well, man, that's the bottom of the barrel. When you look at life, they're still humans. What can we do to help these people in any way? That is Missy Owen's son. Like I said earlier, he died from an overdose. And what she's looking to do is to prevent that, working with the Davis Direction Foundation, happening to anybody else's family. Had a lot of promise. The lady I mentioned who was the Kennesaw State Police officer, this is her daughter. She didn't die. Luckily, somebody was able to get Narcan to her in time to reverse the effects of the heroin that she had been given. So these are not people that you think of like in the first slide back there, that are just laying up in drug houses. These are, you know, fairly unsuspecting people that you would think had an addiction problem. So it exists in our community. Here's House Bill 965. It is also called medical amnesty law, and this is how it interacts. I mentioned areas down in the bluffs. Quite often, a very frequent thing that happens there is people overdose on heroin because it's just so readily available in there. One of the things the medical amnesty law, House Bill 965, was passed that allows those people to administer the drug to other druggies. It's given to druggies so that they can administer Narcan to somebody else in an environment where, you know, EMS might not be there. It would save someone's life. You're thinking, that's crazy. That promotes abuse because they know if they get high and you're giving Narcan to save them, then they're going to do it again over and over. Well, it may be, but it's the case where it may result in being able to save their life. What it says is the person seeking medical assistance for a drug overdose themselves or another person should not be arrested, charged, or prosecuted for the following violations of law. And they talk about possession of a controlled substance less than 4 grams. It applies to your heroin, and it applies even to alcohol. When you look at this, possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana or possession of drug-related objects. And they talk about the violation of a permanent protective order or restraining order, meaning we could all be in this room together and I could overdose on overdose on heroin. One of you could administer Narcan, call 911, and the EMS and fire show up, and law enforcement would come with them. Well, under the medical amnesty law, nobody in here would be charged. And that was kind of tough from the law enforcement perspective of saying, oh, everybody's got to go to jail because you were all in an area where there was drugs and we could charge everybody in here with possession. And House Bill 965 took that away because of the fear that you might have of going to jail if you called 911 and had help coming in. And it actually let them administer the Narcan as well in there. So it's it even gets down, most of these people have extensive criminal records, parole violations. They don't even get busted for a parole violation if they're seeking help for somebody or they're in the room. Yes, sir.
Is this a state or federal law?
It's state law.
State, okay.
State law. It's Georgia state law. House Bill 965.
The other states have passed something similar.
Yeah, a lot of Georgia is considered having the most liberal law of all 50 states now that allows medical amnesty in there. And the subsection that was added in there of 3-3-23 talks about underage possession of alcohol. Same thing applies. A party where there's 18, 19-year-olds, maybe even 16-year-olds there. Somebody gets too much alcohol and passes out. Somebody can call 911. And when law enforcement responds in there under the medical amnesty, because they call for help, nobody in there gets charged. And that might be tough for some folks to believe or to understand, but it also saves lives. It gets help to somebody who otherwise would have just been left laying there. And you know, with opioids and with heroin, one of the things that it attacks is the brainstem itself. Knocks out the respiratory drive, telling your body, hey, you don't need to breathe. That's kind of what it does. When you talk about, and there are some provisions in there, when they talk about that, a person who is employed maybe as a bartender in there, that's kind of an employment section in there when you look at that. But it's pretty extensive talking about what's allowed now under law. And remember, the threshold back here was the amount, 4 grams, yeah. Less than 4 grams. Anything over 4 grams is considered possession with the intent to distribute. It's a little bit different than this possession. There's an intent there. So you go over that amount there. That's the clause in there. Protection against arrest or prosecution if evidence for the arrest or charge of such a violation resulted from somebody making that call in the 911, 2014. And then the other part was tacked on in 15 about the alcohol in there. So it's only a couple of years old that amnesty law. And there are a lot of law enforcement people in the law enforcement community that don't know about House Bill 965. If you want to research it, there's a lot more information in there that you can look at in there. And it also allows for us as first responders. Article 6 of Chapter 4 adds law enforcement and first responders, meaning us, to be able to administer an opioid antagonist to these people. Now, you ask about, well, where do you get the opioid antagonist? It is still a prescription drug. It still has to be administered under a physician's license in the state of Georgia. We are operating through the Davis Direct Foundation. They have a medical director. Our medical director, Dr. Mitchell, is on board with it. We've emailed him all of our training materials. We've emailed him all of the program we have for administering Narcan. He's good with it. Since we're able to get the doses through the Davis Direct Foundation at no charge, one of the things we're doing is right now working under their umbrella. In the future, what we hope to do is to be able, in our own community, to put together something, it's kind of like fire prevention. Putting together your own program where you can administer prevention and administer a response. And we'll have to bring key people on board because the drug is expensive to buy the kits. You don't just buy them for $3 or $4 at the local drugstore. It has to be administered under prescription. And the little kit that I've got over here that I'll let you look at in just a minute, those are about $35. The kits can range in price from about $35 up to about $100, depending on how the drug is administered. So, with that being said, under the Davis Direct Foundation, they're providing us the kits right now so we can get something up and going on our own, allowing us to administer, even you guys who are first responders out there, to be able to go out and to administer the Narcan, which is an opiate antagonist, is actually what it is. And you're protected from criminal or civil liability. Somebody asked the question, what if I give Narcan and somebody dies as a result of it? Well, it's probably not from administering the Narcan, because Narcan, if you give it to somebody who doesn't need it, really doesn't have an effect on them. And if you give it to somebody who, it probably makes them mad because they get the mist up their nose, but if you give it to somebody who is genuinely overdosed on an opioid or heroin or something to that effect, we'll show you how it works. It takes them out of a good high that they've had, and they're probably going to come up fighting. So be ready for the fight. That's kind of the contraindication of administering. Some of you guys have been around when that's been done.
Come on, Jesus.
Now, here's the thing. If we're carrying it, the law has been amended by adding that in there. If we carry it, we must receive training. So what we're doing is meeting the requirement of training in here. And if we administer it, we're going to have law enforcement and we're going to have EMS. These people can't just sign a refusal and say, I'm good now. They've got to go in. 2 reasons. Number one, they have been given a drug in the field by a first responder. Their condition needs to be monitored for other things that may be going on. They may aspirate, they may throw up, and their airway may get blocked. If we're there, if we've just left the scene, then that's an issue. The second thing is, after a while, The Narcan, they can take another hit again, and the Narcan may have been worn off, take another hit of heroin, and all of a sudden, they're back, they're back on the bottom again, they crash again. And that's one of the reasons they need to go in. And the EMS says, oh, we can't just take them hostage and carry them in, it's kidnapping. Well, if law enforcement's there saying you got to go in because you've been given a drug, you overdosed obviously on a drug, you've been given a drug to counteract that, you've got to go in for additional medical care. It's one of those things that, they will have to go in because here are the dangers for it. You're going in because you can't just leave you out there. So keep in mind, we have to also maintain custody of the drug. We can't just hand it out like it's Tootsie Pops or something. We've got to maintain custody of it since it does cost. We have a log. We have to document when we use it, and to get it replaced, I have to provide part of the documentation, the date it was used, and the location. That's why it's so important that we get that off the incident report to get the drug replaced. It's on every marked first out unit that we have. It's even in staff vehicles that have AEDs in them. It's kept in the AED box on the engines, squads, ladders, the administrative vehicles. It's kept in the AED container. So if you're wondering where it's at, and I'll show you what it looks like, what we got here. It's in a little green pouch. It's just like this. And if you go into it, that's what you're going to find. I'll show you in just a minute how that thing works. This is a little bit about our law. And, we always get this. Law enforcement, they get there, we get there, and the first thing you're asked if you're waiting on EMS is, why aren't you doing anything? You're going to let them lay there and die? Well, they really need, they need treatment of some kind, but we may be unable to provide treatment. If somebody goes in, they say, well, you go in and the first thing you're going to do is patient assessment, correct? Seems safe. You go in and you begin patient assessment. And as you go in and you notice these people, one of the first things right off the bat you're probably going to notice is they're breathing at a very low rate. And the first thing we've got to do is not just immediately go for the Narcan. The first thing we've got to do is what? Actually treat the patient. We're treating the patient. We start in a low respiratory rate. You're right. Check the pulse, low heart rate, low respiratory rate, or it may be they're only breathing 2 or 3 times in a minute. The respiratory rate's not down that low because of the heroin overdose. And immediately, what are you going to do, Josh? You got it right.
High flow O2 back.
That's right. The first thing you're going to start doing is working on the problem that you found. Airway is an immediate issue. You want to take into consideration bag valve mask with high flow O2, start treating that. In a lot of cases, that may be what the patient needed. Now, if you start doing that and you notice the patient continues to degrade, maybe they stop breathing altogether. You don't get any respiratory effort out of the patient. You check a pulse, and they've got a very weak pulse. And in that case, when you made that assessment on them, if you get a little bit of scene information, is it possible you may be dealing with a heroin overdose or some type of opioid overdose? And the likelihood now for that is very good. So as you begin to work through that assessment, see, you are doing something for the patient. You're kind of taking away the thing from the family or the bystanders that are there. Why aren't you doing something? Now, here's the next thing. These places, and probably some of you have been in some of these places, not all of them are the most wholesome and respectful citizens that we have to deal with. When you go in there, if it looks unsafe, if you go in there and you think your life or other first responders is in danger, your security is going to take precedence. You may have to back out. If you start to get threatened in there and it looks like it's going to turn a hostile situation, you may have to back out and call help. You're not leaving, you're just backing out. Reverse is a tactical option. You back out until some additional help gets there, because nothing's going to get done if you wind up getting hurt. They talk about the statistics here. It is an epidemic proportion in there. Overdoses now are the leading cause of accidental deaths. They passed automobile accidents. We live in a drug culture and drug society. We have to have them for our own well-being and for our health maintenance. We have to have certain things in there. They talk about how many lethal drug overdoses taking place in 2014. And in Georgia, here are your numbers in Georgia. They talk about every 12 minutes another life being lost to opioid and heroin overdoses that are listed in there. So you think about it, who is it affecting? It talks about 21.5 million, age 12 or older. Now, it doesn't mean those under age 12 are immune from having the drug. They could very well have heroin at 8 years old, depending on the culture they live in and where they're at. So just think about that. 1.9 million prescription pain relievers prescribed every year. That is staggering. How many people get, and it's overprescribed. Like the medical director said, it's probably overprescribed 90% of the time that people have it. And most of us have gotten those prescriptions, and when you got through with it, you look and say, wow, that was good. I'm not throwing it away. I'm gonna send it back. You know, when I get to hurt again or something like that happens again, I got my go-to kit right there. And then later on, you hear about a friend, somebody said, man, I got a knee that's just torn all to pieces. I got to get to the doctor, but he can't see me for a couple of days. Man, I got some of these red pills, you got to try those. And that's been passed down. People have done that for pain relievers. And that's illegal, of course, but, you know, it happens. 78% of the deaths that happen from overdoses are unintentional. There are recreational users there. How about the geriatric? I mentioned the mother was 83 years old. She was in the geriatric population there, and she never overdosed because we monitored her medication. Family members would monitor the medication, give her all that she needed in there. Pediatrics, kind of interesting that that's in there. Even children people are actually considered children, and Scottish Rite will generally take them usually 18 years and younger. And that's kind of the threshold. And that's what they're concluding in pediatrics that overdose. Some of them were thinking about the small kids that get into the medicine cabinet. Yeah, maybe some, but that's a very small percentage. I'm going to tell you, have anybody ever heard of this term skiddling? Something new. I found out about this. I was actually working a fire. You're exactly right. I was actually working a fire, and it was down of all places in Bowden, working a fire down there, and it's been probably 2-3 years ago. And it was a suspicious fire, and I had to go and interview someone in the jail. And I was interviewing the property owner, was in jail. He was locked up at the time of the fire. I'm trying to find out why the fire happened. As I asked him, I said, why do you think the fire happened? He said, oh, I know who burnt my house. He said, I know who burned it. I said, okay. I said, how do you know that? Well, they were bragging to others about what they had done. I said, tell me a little bit more about this. He said, yeah. He said, I had their dope. And he said, I ate their dope. I said, you ate their dope? And they were mad at you, so they retaliated for burning your house? He said, yep, that's right. I said, okay. I said, how do you come about the dope that you had? I said, obviously you said it was theirs. Did they give it to you? Did they sell it to you? What happened? He said, no, I had it. Oh, you took it? Yeah, in a sense. He said, let me tell you about how we operate. He said, the reason I'm in jail now is a burglary charge. And he said, I'm sitting here in a burglary charge and my house burns down, I know who did it. I said, okay. I said, the burglary charge, he said, I went into a house. He said, we get the easy stuff to get, the laptops, the cell phones, the things that we grab and get out of there. He said, the next thing we do is we go to the medicine, where the medicine's kept out in the house. He said, we get every bit of it. We clean everything out, we take it back. Then we go through it, sort through it. Anything that's narcotic based, we'll keep. That's the good stuff. We'll keep that. The rest of it, the stuff like diabetes medication, blood pressure medication, I don't know, the Viagra medication, they're getting all of that. And they're taking that stuff and they're passing it on to other druggies out there. They pass it down or give it to, in some cases, the pediatric population, the teens. They'll pour it into a cereal bowl, cereal, at parties, and they're calling it skittling. They eat. They either put wine or milk in there, and they'll eat that prescription medication, not having any idea what they're doing. That's happening in this county. That's taking place.
Whereas you come into the party, they'll just reach into a bowl and grab a handful. They don't know what's in the handful. It can be anything.
Yeah,
And
it's
they don't know how
unknown.
it's gonna mix with everything else that's in the hand.
That's what's becoming of the drugs that they take out of the house, all the prescription drugs. He told me that. He said, we were breaking the houses around about, and that's what we were doing. We were taking out the medication. So it's happening in our community. Worked another case up on Rainy Road that was very, very similar. The young lady there was able to, she was locked up in jail, so you get to go pull these people out, find out a little bit about who happened to burn their house. She had been a prescription drug user. She couldn't afford prescription drugs any longer. She reverted to get off prescription drugs to heroin. She said, I could get heroin relatively cheap. She said, my boyfriend was bringing it in. He got locked up. I got locked up. He got out of jail. I'm still in jail. I said, okay. And the house burns while you're in jail. I said, now, let me ask you this question. Was he bringing in the dope? She said, for a while. I said, okay. Now, from deductive reasoning, I said, you said you're addicted to heroin. It's not something you come off of without help. You're addicted to prescription drugs. Those are things you don't come off of without help. So in the interim from that, she tells me, she said, I said, there has to be somebody else bringing in drugs. I said, is there a second boyfriend? She dropped her head, she said, yes. I said, okay, 2 boyfriends, house burns, maybe on to something, give me some names. Turns out he's in Paulding County, and I'm still got his name on an active lookout for him, so that he turns up his back and forth from Paulding into Carroll, back and forth across the county line. So you see where it's coming in at. Here's the issue with that young lady. She's going to be locked up. She may go to prison. She may go to prison and she may get out in 2 years. This stuff has such an addictive power. When she comes out, odds are, where do you think she's going to go back into? Same environment. This is what's going to happen to her. She's going to go back to the same dosage of heroin that she had taken prior to getting locked up, and it will kill her with 1 dose of it. We may have a chance of saving her with opioid rescue kits. You're looking at the rest of the statistics there, and that's kind of what we got in there. And as you look at it, drug overdoses, look at how many with prescription drugs that are overdoses that people have to have more and more of. They become addicted to it. With the opiates, they talk about synthetic or naturally occurring that are in there. They bind with receptors in the brain, and they will induce sedation or blocking perception your body has of pain. In some cases, there's a euphoric high that they have this all of a sudden real pronounced great high that they're doing in there. What were they used for? Opioids have been around for a long, long time. Primarily it's pain management, and they're given a lot today. And they were considered, for pain relievers, a necessary part of it, benchmark they talk about. They're still prescribed today for comfort measures. Anybody ever heard of the drug fentanyl? What's fentanyl used for?
Pain relief.
It's a pain reliever. That's right. In the environment you work in, Tony,
I give tons of it.
you give a lot of fentanyl.
People love it.
Yeah, they do love it.
Good
And
stuff.
fentanyl has a wide range of being abused. I'm going to tell you how bad it is. Some of you in EMS may see older patients or the geriatric population that you're working from going to nursing homes. They have long-term issues, like I mentioned with my mother, spine issue, they have issues where they have arthritis so bad, they need pain management. And rather than give them opiates consistently, they'll get a fentanyl patch to go on them, and it's a release into their body. The druggies and the heroin addicts know this. They've gone resorted, I don't know if it's happening here, but in other areas, they've resorted to dumpster diving to take the fentanyl patches out that have come off of nursing home patients. They'll chew these fentanyl patches to get the high off of them. Yeah, that's how bad it is with these people who are addicted. Anything that's out there. Here are some commonly prescribed opioids. I knew a guy who was addicted to codeine. He would go in and he would buy every bottle of cough syrup in the drugstore. He had a path that went all the way from Leeds, Alabama to Douglasville. He'd go in there, and his favorite cough syrup was Vicks 44. Anybody remember that? It's been around for a while. Probably gone off the market now. But anything, it had a lot more codeine than a lot of the other cough syrups had in it. There's the fentanyl that's in there. The hydrocodone, the Lorcet, Lortabs, we talked about those in a few minutes. Some of the others. How about this one right here, methadone? They use that for, if you hear anybody say and tell you that I have been prescribed methadone, look what it is. It's an opioid. And it's to try to get people off of heroin. And there are opioid clinics. There's one in Sand Hill. Most of you probably know about it. Up there behind the City Cafe up there. Guy back in there who was, I guess he's still open. He was just a few weeks ago. What they do is these people who are addicted come in there and he gives them a measured amount of methadone to try to wean them off of heroin, to get them off of a heroin. But these people are going to find other sources for their drugs in there. Some of them are legitimate, but it's a very, very hard addiction to break, that I'm told. So you see the other things in there. The oxycodones, the morphines, all the other things that are in there, all of them are opioids. So people who overdose on these things, the Narcan kits will reverse their overdose. If we can get there in time, have a short window of time to be able to do that. They're talking about the sources of it here. How do these people get it? Most of it, they say 50% of it get free from a friend or a relative. And 70% of the people that are on it got it from a friend or a relative to start out with. And you think about the illicit place, like I mentioned there in the Bluffs, a drug dealer, that's only 4% in there. Some of it, some people take it, burglars. Some of them go from one doctor to another, a doctor shop. The pill mills, they're kind of shutting those down now. They realize the issue with them. But we've dealt with these people out there. So you see what it looks like, where it's coming from in there. Here's what you need to remember. When a person has the overdose, when they overdose on anything that's been prescribed opiate-based or heroin, that binds to receptors in the brain. That gives them that euphoric high, that feeling, oh man, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. They look at that, and that opioid binds in that receptor. What we're doing with giving the Narcan is we're erasing that. We're erasing that receptor, that opioid from the receptor in the brain. The Narcan will go in and knock it out. That's what it actually does. This is why they do it. When you go out and look at it, and you see it, here are some things you need to look at. That decreased respiratory rate is number one, because they can't live if they can't breathe. So one of the things you may have to do is bag them, breathe for them there. They're real lethargic. You get out there, they're real lethargic, or they're saying, man, I'm on a high. You know, it's one of those things. And the pinpoint pupils. Now they talk about some of the other things in here, Darvon causing dilated pupils in there, using Demerol, having the dilated pupils, but what are you looking for? You're looking for anything that's abnormal. If it's pinpoint or if it's real dilated, that's a clue for you. That's one of the things you want to take into consideration. How's the respiratory rate? What their pupils look like? Is there anything else that may be an indicator It can help me to decide what I need to do in patient care. Here's what we do. There are the opioids. Same thing that we looked at. It'll eventually lead to cardiac arrest. That's why it's so important to treat. They don't breathe, the heart don't work. What are some indicators there? They talk about when they become hypoxic. You see them, they're blue lips, blue nail beds in there. That causes a problem with critical organs in the body, and they'll come up with a hypoxic brain injury within 4 to 6 minutes. How far out are we in most cases? You know, we can get there within that time window sometimes. If it's just down the street or way off, I mean, we may have a long response time, but in a lot of areas, we're going to be within that time window. So when you get to that, you know, it's important to start treating what you see. High flow O2, do your assessment real good. Look for anything in there that may indicate that this person could be experiencing overdose. You may have a witness that tells you. Now, here's what it also mimics. Some of the things that you know that it mimics. Strokes, that's why assessment is so important. Hypoglycemia, or an acute infection that somebody has had and it's now to the point high fever, other things that are in there. So, with a good patient assessment, kind of lead most of that to where it needs to go. Could you do a D-stick and see if they got low blood sugar? You could. And if you're looking at, you know, some of the basic patient assessment tools on strokes, you may be able to look at that and say, maybe rule out something on the stroke here. And just looking at your assessment. Here we go. It reverses the opioid overdose and knocks out the opioid receptor in the central nervous system. And usually, when you give this, here's the difference in what we're giving versus what's on the ambulance. These guys give it on the ambulance out there, they give it in a controlled environment. What's the prescribed dose on an ambulance? When you're actually giving the first dose of Narcan to somebody, who can help me with that? 0.4, anything less? Tony?
0.2 a lot of times.
0.2. Why?
You want to ease them out
You wake them up slow.
so they don't hurt you.
That's right.
They don't get sick.
Most of the time, they'll come up fighting. If you give it to them quick and fast, I think we may have had one
If you
time.
don't like the ER doctor, then you get a 0.4.
Yeah. Right, you push the 0.4 right in.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's given in the ambulance, it's a controlled environment. They can manage a lot of things in the ambulance. They can give a little more than 0.2, it can go up to 0.4. But remember, it's erasing all that out of the brain real quickly at 0.4. The dosage we're giving is high. It's a high dosage, so get ready. Yes, sir.
What do you do with the patient right after you give it to them?
Hold on for the fight.
Yeah, brace for
Yeah,
impact.
hold on for the fight, because that's probably what you got to, just be ready for that. They're gonna come up, because you've just taken out the best high they've ever had. You've taken that away from them, they're gonna be ready to fight, so just be wary of that. Yes,
If they
sir.
come up swinging, can we retaliate?
No,
Or do we hold them down?
no, no,
Restrain, well, I meant like restrain, like
Yeah.
hold them down and.
well, you wanna do your best to try to hold them, hold them down in there. It may take 3 people, some of these people, to keep them from hurting themselves. Because remember, there's something else going on with them.
Well, most of the
If
time.
they get up,
it's
they're
your-
like
it's
wailing
your-
us in
it's
the
your-
face.
You're gonna know who's gonna do it, though.
Yeah.
I mean, if you got grandma who accidentally took 2 pills in a day and now she's probably not gonna come up.
Yeah.
But you take.
But if somebody comes up and just starts beating the crap out of you in the face, what do you do at that
The
point?
thing to do is step back.
Yeah.
Because if the scene becomes unsafe, you can't stay there and the scene's
There's one
unsafe.
like they're gonna vomit too, so.
Very well could, very well could. Aspirin in that case. So just keep that in mind. Now, one of the things that used to be administered on the ambulance that had to be drawn out of a syringe, by doing what we're doing, we're giving it through the nose. And by doing what we're doing, we're giving a little more medication, and we don't have any risk either for exposure to blood unless they, hurt themselves from a violent reaction if they're beating their head against the wall or something. Now, you give it to somebody, I mentioned this earlier, you give it to somebody who does not have an opioid, does it hurt them?
No.
No, it doesn't hurt them at all. So you're not gonna kill them by giving them this. The main thing you want to do, the reason the drug name is, if you look at Noxalon, and one of the things that everybody knows, Narcan, and you look at the drug itself, one of the things you want to do is to reverse the hypoxic damage that they have in there. These are your side effects, just like we mentioned there. They could go into cardiac arrest, and you're prepared to treat for that. It's rare, they say. Doesn't have any effect on alcohol or any of these other drugs that are listed here. So just keep that in mind. And one of the things to think about is recreational users. There may be people who have ingested 2 or more substances. They may have done heroin, and they may have done something with the heroin as well. I've actually seen somebody who's given GHB and also given a strong narcotic at the same time. That is a prescription to kill somebody when that happens. Now, will the Narcan have any effect on that person? Probably not. But in this case, it did, because there's probably very little GHB in what that person had. There was something that was given as a prescription other than that. Now, here's one of the nasal misters that, not exactly what we've got, but it is one version of being able to administer it. The atomizer is actually the thing that looks like a syringe that goes together. This is the atomizer to go into the nostril. And I think this was designed for 0.2 is the dosage on that one. And the idea on that one is 1 of each side. But ours are a little different from this. We'll look at it. Here's what we've got. 4 milligrams. That's the fight. That's the 4 milligram dosage. You open the kit up, and this is exactly what it looks like. It's in a blister pack. It's just like what you're looking at right there. Pass it around, let you guys look at it. Simply goes into the nostril. You stick it into the nostril, and you push it. And it goes deep enough in. Think about what's in the sinuses. Capillary beds. You got a capillary bed there that's very receptive to being able to have the Narcan inside. That's what it looks like. One of the fastest absorption rates in the body. There's one other one, but I don't think you want to try to use it as an administration route.
They refer back to the first class.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So that's exactly how it works.
so you just do it one nostril?
Do it one nostril. You administer it there. Go in, choose the nostril there. Put the device in, and just firmly and steadily push it in, and it'll go in. Now, here's some of the things you got to be prepared for. We said fight, vomiting, those things in there. If you get recovery, you may have to place them in a recovery position. Put them on their side. We'll show you that in there. Now, if no change occurs, and this is on the mister that they have, they talk about doing the other half in there, you're giving 4 milligrams. If no change occurs at 4 milligrams, you wait a while, and if there's a second dose available, which battalions have them on them, the battalion should be there within about 15 minutes if you need a second dose. You got an option for a second dose. There's what one looks like there. There's a recovery position for reversal in there. What are the barriers to absorption in there? Prolonged abuse, when you have that taking place. Nasal discharge. Any vasoconstrictors that they may have in there. Debris, dust, powders. They could have been busted in the nose. Just those kind of things are some of the barriers to get the absorption in. It's a cost-effective way to save life. And first responders are, having access to it. We've got it here now. I don't know that we ran one that we've used. We've had it on truck's about, what, about 3 weeks or so, Chief?
About that.
Yeah. I don't know that we've read one yet that made, made the conditions save a life there, but according to the trends, that's what we're gonna see. Any questions?
How much did you say that would cost?
About $35 for each of the kits. Somebody's making a lot of money, needless to say. The kit just consists of a little zipper pack and a little instruction sheet in there, and a little bit about, the Davis Foundation, and then the drug itself. The ones with the misters in them are a little more money. They're the ones that cost you the $100. They're a little bit different, have a little bit more in there.
And actually give them to the drug dealer too?
They'll actually give them the druggies, sure will. What they're trying to do is save a life. They're trying to save a life, because if they don't have it, if somebody overdoses, they don't get anything, they die. Somebody might say, ha, good riddance. But think about it, if it's your son or your daughter or your nephew, wouldn't you want something done for them? You gotta think about one thing, with addiction, addiction's like a disease. There are people that are on stuff, and I talked to a young lady in jail, and said, I don't want to get out of jail until I can find some help. And the help is something way beyond what most of us as first responders know how to do, other than just give them Narcan. It's gonna require a support network for a long time. I've talked to people that have lost children, adult children, of course, but talked to them, and it's amazing when you start talking about this stuff, how many people say, we need something in this community because the use of heroin and opiates are gonna be so profound to turn this thing around. Kind of like having a good fire safety program. If you never turn the wheel, you're money ahead. If you never turn the wheel answering the call for the fire, by having a good prevention program in place, that's never been a wasted effort, I felt like. That's always been a good positive effort. Do fire prevention programs. I think we gotta address this, because there are a lot of people, you know people in your own family that have problems with things like this, so I don't know if family it hasn't affected. I said that. Good questions. Anything else? No one else? All right, let's take 5. Let Pete break down and get out of here, and y'all stretch your legs.
No problem.